Well, hi, and welcome to Intro to Drafting Tools. So today we're going to give you a quick, the ins and outs on the basic set of drafting tools. There'll be more tools that we have you use as the trimester goes on, but this is kind of the good introductory list of things that you should probably have or are going to need access to as we go through this. So real quick, let's get started. All right, so first of all, you need to understand the difference between drafting and sketching. And at this point in your life, if you haven't taken a tech ed or a drafting class, most likely everything that you've created so far in the form of a drawing has been a sketch, which is a quick, easy idea, a quick, easy way to communicate something. So, for example, I wanted to build a catapult. So, this is my sketch of a catapult. And as you can see, I grabbed a piece of paper and a couple of pens and or markers and drew out what I envisioned my catapult looking like. But the difference between a sketch and a draft is this was a quick, easy way to communicate what my catapult's going to look like. It doesn't have a lot of required information, and that's what a draft is. A draft is a formal drawing that is exact with all required information. And when you say all required information, what are we talking about there? Well, we're talking about the sizes and lengths of things. And so if you look here, you don't know if this board here is 6 inches or if it's 3 feet. And so it doesn't have all that necessary information that you would need to actually build it. Okay. So what I mean by a sketch or a draft, and this is a draft. So let me put here in the center of my drawing board. That is a draft, and you'll notice it's three-dimensional or shows multiple views or multiple sides. It has all the measurements on it, and all that information is there for you. And yes, it takes a lot longer to draft something than it does to sketch something. So just be aware, drafting takes more time. It is perfect. Your things should be exact. Okay, and so that is our goal, is to get things exact. All right. So the difference between a sketch and a draft is obviously one is quick and formal, and one is quick and just communicates the other. The other one is a formal idea. Next tool we're going to use is a drafting board. So at school or at home, instead of using a drafting board, what you're going to probably use is a drafting table or a table at home that has a straight edge. And what I mean by a straight edge is that on the left side or the right side has a nice straight edge that you can lean things up against. So a round table does not work as a drafting board. Okay, so at school we actually have some drafting boards, and I have one here in the shop with me. Let me show you real quick. So this is the same thing that I was showing on the screen just a second ago. The one on the screen is wood, and this one is actually wood as well, and I have covered it with black shelf paper because when I put paper in front of the camera, when this was white or wood colored, it was really hard to see. When I covered it with black shelf paper, it made it easier to see what I've set down in front of there. So this is my black draft board, and if you look really closely, you can even see there's air bubbles that are coming up through the board now. I don't know where those came from. But a draft board, what you're looking for is a good flat surface with a straight edge, either on the left side or the right side. And I know you can't see the right side of my draft board, but that's kind of what we're going after, okay? All right, good straight board or flat board with a good edge. Hey, next thing is a T-square, and I got a couple T-squares here that I'm going to show you. There's two parts to a T-square, so if you look at the slide here, T-squares are used to draw straight horizontal lines. There's two parts. There's the head of the T-square and the blade of the T-square. So I'm going to put out just a couple samples here for you to take a look at that will show you what we're talking about here. So here are two T-squares. So in the middle of a pandemic where you might be working remotely at home, we made T-squares. This is a 5-gallon paint stick and a door shim. And this is what we used last year to draft from home. And I'm going to make some of these for remote learning this year. Or if you're at home, you would have access to draft, and I think that's a pretty quick, easy way to do that. This is a wooden T-square that I purchased years and years ago, and I've had this at home. Boy, it doesn't have the year on it, but I bet I've had this 15, 20 years. And it's just a short wood T-square that I keep out in the shop here for laying things out. And then I have metal ones, I have plastic ones, I have a bunch of different T-squares. But these are T-squares. This part here, where the would be the head of the T-square, and this would be the blade of the T-square. And real quick, let me move this out of the way and kind of show you how this works. So if you look at a T-square, you'll notice that the head of the T-square sits underneath the blade. And so that means this is hanging down. Let me see if I can get that in a camera view so you can see it. This part's hanging down. So when we set it on the edge of a table, we set the head of the T-square up against the edge of the table, and we slide it up and down along that edge. Now when we take a piece of paper and stick it down against the T-square, and if I tape it to the table, as I slide across the T-square, I can use it to draw straight horizontal lines. And so that's how a T-square works. It's used to draw straight horizontal lines. All right, next tool. Triangles. So triangles are clear plastic, and of course they look just like triangles. There's nothing really very amazing about them. They are usually made out of plastic. Let me show you a couple here. Switch cameras. And so here I have, and see the problem with these clear triangles is they reflect the light, and you can even see the camera directly above me. But so these are clear plastic triangles. There's two different types. This one's called a 30-60-90, and the reason it's called a 30-60-90 is you got a 30-degree angle, a 60-degree angle, and a 90-degree triangle or angle. And then this one here, and these are the same. I got a big one and a small one. This is called a 45-45-90, and this is called a 45-45-90. When we refer to a 45-90, people always call it a 45-90. They don't repeat the 45 twice. But we have, so we have bigger drafting triangles, and I have some smaller ones here. Those are my small drafting triangles. I usually use the small ones. They seem to work pretty well. If you are at home and you are drafting at home, I think what we're going to do is we're going to make some of these for you to use at home that are made out of wood. And so it won't be as fancy, but they'll work just as well for what we're doing. So we want you to be able to, if you're remote learning, we want to make sure you have access to these materials, okay? All right, so there's my T-square. I'm going to move my T-square out of the way. All right, next tool. So the next thing we're going to show you is a scale, and this is pretty straightforward. You guys have all seen rulers before. Well, a scale is not quite the same as a ruler. A scale has a ruler on it, so if you look kind of down here, you can see that there are inches on this scale, and those inches in fact are divided into 16 equal parts. And I know that because if I look here at the end of the scale, it tells me, hey, each inch is divided into 16 parts. I didn't need to count them because it tells me. So if you rotate the scale, excuse me, I'm yawning. It's too early in the morning to be working, I guess. And so on the end of the scale, it also tells you what the scale is that you're drawing to. So if I were to use this scale right here, where it says 3/16, that means for every 3/16 of an inch I draw, it's going to be 1 foot. Okay, or 1 inch, and that allows you to draw things bigger than they really are or smaller than they really are. So my scale here, and these come in different colors. I have a white one here. It's kind of hard to see because it reflects the light so bad. I also have a yellow one here somewhere. Here it is. So these are the same exact thing. They're just printed on different color materials. And so here is my ruler. That has an inch divided into 16, and then I have all kinds of different scales on here. Again, if I need to draw something bigger than it is in real life or smaller than it is in real life, I can use a scale. And what that does is it draws it proportionally accurate, but just smaller to fit on the table, okay, or onto the piece of paper. All right, so that's how a scale is used. Hey, a couple things. When we use a scale, never use them as a straight edge, never use them to draw a line. We use them only to measure, okay? And that's relatively important that we make sure that we don't use them to measure. And number two, don't bang them on the table, don't bang them on the desk. When you do that, it puts dents in them, and then it makes it really hard for them to read. And don't write on them. That's kind of a bummer too when you guys write on them. All right, next up. Next slide. Oh, got to go the right direction. All right, next slide. Compasses. So you're going to need a compass to use. Compass is draw circles. In your student packet of materials that you'll need for this year, compasses should have been included in there. If you look here, the compass that is on the right is kind of an old school student compass. They work just mediocre. They don't work great. So I much prefer the compasses that are on the left here. Once you set them, they stay adjusted until you readjust them, and they work really well. The ones that I have here at home look a little different. This is the compass I use, and this is kind of a heavy-duty compass for use with students. It also works great for writing on wood. You'll notice that every compass has a scale on it to help you adjust it, and so this one has a scale here. This scale is not accurate at all. Never use the compass, the scale, the measuring device on the compass. Always set it manually. So we're going to loosen this up a little bit, and so when I loosen that bolt or that nut, it allows me to open and close it. And so if I wanted to set this to a desired measurement like 4 inches, remember, if I want a 4-inch circle, compasses measure in radius, not diameter. So I need to do half of what size circle I want. So if it's a 4-inch circle I want, I'm going to set my compass to 2 inches. So I'm going to take the stabby part of the compass, place it on 0. I usually hold it like this. And so then I can place this at 0, open this up to 2 inches exactly. When I get it to 2 inches, I'm going to tighten it up. And once I tighten it up, I go back to my scale and check it. And voila, now I'm prepared to draw a 2-inch circle. So I'm going to take this piece of paper, flip it over. The way you hold the compass is a little different. Whatever is comfortable for you is how you should use it. These were originally designed to be used like this. I hold it down here like a pencil, and then when I am ready to draw my circle, instead of holding this straight up and down, I lean it forward a little bit, and I go over my circle a couple times. Okay, and if I'm holding down here, I can do it with both hands. It doesn't matter which hand I use, and voila, we have a 4-inch circle. Okay, all right. So that's how a compass works. We have other tools for drawing circles. Circle templates work really well. So a circle template is a piece of plastic, and it's kind of a special piece of plastic because it doesn't expand or contract, which is kind of nice. It's a piece of plastic where they punch out all these circles, and it is again used to draw circles, and they make all kinds of different ones. The one you're seeing here have really small circles up to big circles. They come in metric and standard. Make sure when you use a circle template that you're using a standard or US measurement or English system measurement. So the way these kind of work, and it's kind of hard to see on the paper here, I don't know, we'll try this. Put a piece of paper on my drafting boards, but when you look at this, there are 4 black little marks on the edges of the circle, and so if you want to draw a circle that's perfectly centered on something, you would draw a cross on the paper first with some straight edges, and then you'd put one leg of the cross on these 4 little black marks, and it will center that circle for you. Okay, so what I like about compasses or about circle templates is that they're really good. Another yawn here. Excuse me. They're really good at making perfect circles. They're easy to trace. They're easy to follow. What I don't love about them is they're expensive, and middle school kids love to hold them like this and flex them in their hands, and then they break usually between the small circles. They snap, and then we have to replace them. I still have my circle templates that I bought in 7th grade, still use them every week, but the ones at school seem to last us about a month. So take good care of our circle templates. Don't bend them, don't flex them, and don't spin them on your finger or a pencil. Okay, circle templates used to draw circles. They work really well. Take good care of them. Next up. You've all seen these. We've been asking you guys to get protractors for 100 years, and it seems like every year they're on the list, uh, and uh, and every year you don't seem to use them very much. But protractors work great. They're used to measure angles, and there's 3 different types of angle. There's a right angle, an acute angle, or an obtuse angle. And if you don't know what those are, come see me. But what I have found in the last couple of years is they're teaching this to you in elementary school, so you guys come to us knowing. The one thing I'll warn you about protractors, and I don't have one sitting here I'd show you, is that the first thing you need to do when you pick up a protractor is study the protractor to see if you know how to read it accurately. So this protractor, you would put the base of your triangle on this line here, and the corner of the angle here, and make sure one side of it lines up with the 0, and then you can measure that angle no matter how big it is. and so forth. Some protractors, you put the baseline of the triangle down here, and 0 starts all the way down here. So they're all just a little different. They're all a little bit weird and quirky. So the important part is to make sure you understand before you start how your particular protractor works. All right? All right, next tool, French curves. So we've given you a tool so far to draw straight horizontal lines. And straight horizontal lines is what we use the T-square for. And to draw vertical and diagonal lines is what we use the triangle for. And to draw circles, we had two different tools. We had circle templates and compasses. And again, with the circle templates, usually use circle templates to draw small circles and compasses to draw big circles. And so now we need a tool that will draw arcs and curves. And so on the screen here, you're seeing four different types of French curves, and these are used to draw arcs and curves. You'll notice when you look at the arcs and curves that we use in class, they have pencil marks on them, and that is if you want to draw the same arc or the same curve over and over and over again. We mark it on the French curve, and it lays it out for you so you can use it over and over again. I don't know why I'm yawning so much. I'm tired today. All right, next up, you're going to need a roll of tape. And this is a roll of masking tape. They actually make special tape for drafting, and it's really expensive. And let me tell you the properties of good drafting tape is that it's not very sticky, so it comes off your paper pretty easy. You know what we use? We use cheap masking tape, and it works just the same. Or like at home here, I don't have any masking tape, but I do have a roll of blue painter's tape, and it works wonderful. It's expensive. I wouldn't recommend using this every day, but if you have a couple drafts to do, this blue drafting tape works just as well. Nothing fancy, but it holds your paper down, and it doesn't tear the edges of the tape, the paper off when you pull on it. So you're going to need some tape. Okay. All right, let's show you a little bit. There's a bunch of draft tools all laying up there. I love this picture, and let me tell you why I like this so much. This picture was taken about the same year that I was born. And so there are some things that have changed, and there's an awful lot that has not changed. So as you can see, all those tools are sitting on a drafting board that is wood colored. There's a T-square there that is wood, and the blade of the T-square is kind of a natural wood color, and the head of the T-square is painted black, but that works the same as any T-square. You'll notice the triangles here are orange. Mine were clear, but they come in several different colors. I like the orange ones because they're easy to find when you set them down on the table. The clear ones kind of disappear, but the clear ones are cheaper, so that's why we use them. If you look here, you can see the French curve. You can see a scale, the drafting tape, the compass. Oh, I didn't mention this, an eraser. In this picture, you'll notice that the eraser is a red gum eraser. Let me tell you, that's not what you want. Get yourself a good white eraser and don't unwrap it. I'm going to do a whole video on erasers, and the secret to a good eraser and keeping it in good shape is not to open it up, not to unwrap it, and I'll give you more about erasers in the next video. Okay? All right, so there are a couple things that you'll notice are not on my list of tools. One of them is an erasing shield. And an erasing shield is a paper-thin piece of stainless steel with different shapes punched in it. And the way it works is we lay it down over something we don't want to erase, and we use it to protect things in the drawing that we don't want to erase. So if it's really close to other stuff, we use an erasing shield. The problem with erasing shields is they're really sharp, and if you're not careful, they always seem to end up cutting kids, or they throw them and someone gets hurt. So we don't use a lot of those anymore, or they fold them and that destroys them. The other thing you're going to notice here is there's a thing called a pencil pointer. You're like, what is a pencil pointer? Well, it basically looks like a paint stick with sandpaper glued to it. And then down here, you notice this says pencils, but those aren't really pencils. Those are things called lead holders. And a lead holder and a mechanical pencil are not the same thing. Lead holders used to come with a piece of lead in them that was about an eighth inch, so 0.125, and compare that to 0.06. There's a huge difference. So a lead holder used to come with this big chunk of lead in it, and then you would lean over the corner of your desk and you would sharpen it using a pencil pointer, and so you'd get all kinds of graphite or lead particles all over the floor. So if you used to walk in to old drafting rooms in the school district. Next to each desk, there's always a black stain on the floor from people sharpening their pencils. In the 80s, we started getting mechanical pencils and regular wood pencils that were sharp enough, and so people went to those. But it was kind of an old time thing. So if you were sharpening your pencil in class and you had all this little particles of lead, sometimes they would get on your table or on your paper, and if you used your hand to sweep them off, it would smear them. So you use this dusting brush to dust the eraser marks and the shavings from the sharpening your pencil or any dust off your paper. Well, obviously we don't need the dusting brush or the pencil pointer anymore. We've kind of gone away from that. All right. So, hey, let's chat a little bit about different types of lines. And in another video, I'm going to do some lines for you. But this is just a couple of them that are important here. So I wish this was in a different order. I always like to talk about construction lines first. So when you go to draw something, I want you to draw very, very light lines. And those light lines are called construction lines. And so we use those to build a drawing. There is a ton of erasing when we draw things, okay? A ton of erasing. So if we draw things very lightly, aka construction lines, we can always go back and erase what we end up not using or what we don't need or what we need to change. After we draw those lines nice and light, those construction lines, we can always go back and darken them up, and once we darken them up, they become visible lines. So a good solid dark line is a visible line, okay? And so let me see if I have a sample here that I can show you. Okay, so here's a little drawing of, let's see if we can, so I don't know that there's a good example of a visible line or a construction line, but when you watch the first video, when you watch me draw the H, I will explain the difference between a construction line and a visible line, okay? On this, there are some cool lines I want you to acknowledge. So right here, let's start at the top. A extension line is, notice this little line that extends from the object that we drew, or see this one here, how they're sticking out. They're lines that extend from the object and connect to your dimension line. So here is an extension line, and it comes down and connects to a dimension line, and a dimension line is where we write the dimensions or the sizes. So we have this line that comes down, we picked up our pencil, we left a space, then we put it back down, and then we write the size in here. Notice what is missing is there's no units on here. So it says 2 1/4. Well, we don't know if that's feet, yards, or mile, and I'm guessing it's 2 1/2. But we should have put some units on there so we know those are inches. So this is an extension line. This is a dimension line. These little things on the end are called arrowheads. Okay, and those are pretty cool. And so that's how we measure out and tell people the sizes of things. If you look up here, here's some more dimensions. And so this one is telling us from the center here, this one's saying from here to here, the size is 1 3/4. And this really weird character here is telling us that that's diameter. So that's a symbol for diameter. You could either write 1 3/4 and then write the word diameter after it, or you could just put this circle with a line through it, and that tells people that that's diameter as well. Okay? So just some sample lines. Let me tell you how we're going to get started. I'm going to have you watch the video on how to draft the H, and the first couple steps are, number one, squaring up a piece of paper, and that process is nothing more than taking a T-square, putting it up against the edge of the board, sliding the paper down to it, and taping it down. That's called squaring up a piece of paper, okay? So we are taping the paper down parallel to a T-square, okay? And it has to be exact. So what I typically do is put my T-square down and kind of hold it in place. I press down on it, and then I like to slide the paper against it and tape this corner. And then I slide my T-square down just a tiny bit, and I look across there and see if it looks parallel. If it is, I put a piece of tape here. Then I slide my T-square back over the top and bring it down, and I look at this reveal down here and see if it's straight all the way across. Okay, so that's the act of squaring up a piece of paper. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a 1/2 inch border on. So if you look at the sample I've already drawn, if you look around here, there is a frame also known as a border that is a 1/2 inch all the way around the paper. And you might notice it looks bigger on the top than the bottom. That's because the camera's not sitting perfectly straight. It's actually angled slightly, and so it makes it look like it's off a little bit. But we went all the way around and did a 1/2 inch border or a 1/2 inch frame. The next thing we did is we did a 1/2 inch nameplate. Okay, and so we came up a 1/2 inch from the bottom border, and we divided that into 4 boxes. And there's a box here for your name, the date, the period, and the assignment. And whenever we put any text in there, we always use all capitals, no cursive. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to do a 1/2 inch Lucky L. And the 1/2 inch Lucky L is I measure up a 1/2 inch and draw a very light line, and I measure in a 1/2 inch and draw a very light line, and that's where we're going to start our drawing. So this drawing's already finished, so you don't see it there. You will see it when we show you how to draft on the letter H. Okay, so that's how we get started. Square piece of paper, 1/2 inch border, 1/2 inch nameplate, 1/2 inch Lucky L, and that kind of gets you rolling. Okay, so this shows you a drafting board and a piece of paper and my T-square. So you can see how they're aligning the paper with the T-square. And the important part is making sure the head right here, this portion of the T-square is up against that edge of that board or on this side. It has to be on the left or the right, but once you pick a side, we keep the T-square there the whole time for the whole project, okay? And then this shows a piece of paper with that 1/2 inch border all the way around. And then notice here that we went up another 1/2 inch, and this is where you'd write your name, the date, the period, and the assignment. Okay? So when I was your age, they used to make us practice writing letters over and over and over. We spent weeks on this. I'm not going to do that to you guys. I'm going to ask you simply, when you write on your drafts, to use all capital letters, no cursive, and just do as nice a job as you can creating those letters, keeping them the same height and width the best you possibly can. Okay, that's one of those things that'll drive you nuts if you're no good or you have fine motor skill problems, or it's real hard for you to write real nice. And that's kind of the story in middle school. Here's kind of a little piece of sample that I've done before. So those are kind of the scoop. That's the deal. That's the intro to drafting tools. So we went over drafting boards, T-squares, triangles, scales, compasses, circle templates, protractors. Did I miss anything? I think that's it. So those are kind of the introductory drafting tools that you're going to need this year. So good luck, and the next video will show you how to draw something, okay? All right. Welcome, or have a good day, and good luck on your first draft.